Hey everybody, welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
And we have with us Jim Hilton.
Jim Hilton.
I always feel like we have to introduce our guests when they're here in
That's
the
right.
studio with us.
Yes.
Because it's just awkward if we
It
don't.
is.
If you're watching the video at least. I guess if you're listening to the audio, you have no idea.
Person sitting next to me. And
But a lot of
he
folks-
doesn't say anything for a while. Yeah.
Exactly. Jim is, I believe, only the second time we've had a non-BlueStar person in
This is
studio
true.
with us.
That's true.
Like we had Mike and Aaron
Mike's
from
true.
LG
Yep,
last
yep,
year,
yep,
and
and
I'm
Aaron.
pretty sure
Yep.
that's been it. So
I think you're right.
Congrats. You're in a very small
right.
and elite club.
I feel like in a rare occasion.
Yes.
true.
Yes. Rare
That
form.
actually showed up. He drove up here, even like an hour drive, an hour plus to come up here and sit and hang with us in the studio. So hopefully we don't disappoint you with that experience today. But our topic today. So I'm going to start this off by saying, as someone who's experienced food poisoning,
Ooh.
food safety is a little bit of a topic that is of interest to me. Something I find important. I did not enjoy that experience. I don't want to ever have it again.
No. Generally not a good experience, right?
And even anyone who wants, fresh, clean food, stuff that's not likely to make them sick, it's an important topic to know. And there's been a lot of, situations in the past, couple decades or so where, food safety has been of a concern. And you hear a lot about this stuff on the news. So if people do get sick, we want to make sure that we can identify sources as quickly
We got
as
technology to
possible.
help. That's what I'm saying,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
You want to contain, you want to control.
Yes.
And that's supply chain improvements is what we're talking about, and that's where the technology can kind of get in there. And Jim's an expert in this particular topic, so he's going to help guide us through what's going on. We're going to talk about why there's these occurrences that are happening, if there's an overwhelming issue, if it's just we're on top of this stuff more than we used to be. We're going to talk about the explosion of direct to consumer options in the food world and how that might be impacting this discussion. We're going to talk about because everyone loves legislation and rules and
of course
governance and,
Yes.
and all that stuff. So we're going to talk about the FSMA 204 final rule.
Really an acronym? No.
Oh, no, who would have thought? Yeah, that's impacting food traceability. And then we're going to get into the technology, obviously, too, and figure out, hey, what can you guys go out and sell that can help make sure that they're abiding by these regulations and that, folks like us aren't getting sick when we just want to eat some, chicken nuggets or something.
This is impactful to all of us, though.
It really
is. This is good stuff.
It is. All that plus our usual value to the VAR. What's TEConnecting with us? It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, as I mentioned today, our guest is Jim Hilton. He is the founding partner of Hilton Classics.
Yes.
But that doesn't even really belie your depth of experience and times you've spent in the channel on various angles, from the vendor side, the VAR side. So, Jim, kick us off there. Give us a little bit of your background, your history, and then tell us maybe what you're doing with Hilton Classics right now.
All right. Well, first of all, if you think about you have to look at the white beard. I've been around this space for quite a while. Fun fact is, 1978, I was a bread man. All I had to do is make that delivery on time.
I'll be darned. Did not know you did DSD or what a DS. Yeah.
My day was made if I made it to my main market by 7 a.m.
I'll be darned.
If it was 7:15, my day was not made. It was not fun. So you can really look at my career in 3 chapters, probably. Chapter 1 is I was from user to what our listeners would call an end customer with the baking operation, 62 plants, about 9,000 routes.
Wow.
I worked my way up through from delivery person, bread man, to supervision to management. The lucky part of that career was it was a fairly forward-thinking, think about 1982. And route automation.
I'm sure it was not as sophisticated as it is now.
And so
that's a lot of paper, I'm imagining.
Our illustrious leadership got the bright idea that they could automate and forecast the needs of the shelf.
I see.
They brought that to our bakery as a test, and I was just totally enamored with it. Number one. Number two, I was the youngest sales manager, so when somebody said, who's going to be in charge of this? Everyone else stepped backwards, and I ended up being responsible for it. Nice. Long story short, we deployed it. I ended up being moved to corporate, and we deployed 9,000 routes. I was the project leader for that.
That's awesome.
And that was 89. We finished up that project. It was quite successful. But I was enamored with that, and I didn't know the meaning of early adoption, but I thought this is something. And further, the project was over, so I didn't want to go back to getting up at 4 a.m. to go to work.
Understandable.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I moved over to the software side. Chapter 2 is develop software for perishable delivery systems, food and beverage, and that's where I kind of expanded out to other parts of the other goods on the truck, let's call it that. And then the third chapter of that is I joke that I moved to the dark side of on the hardware side of that equation, and spent nearly 18 years with Symbol, Motorola, Zebra, through those chapters. And so that's kind of my history.
There you go.
Wow, you have done it all.
We got a true expert.
I mean,
a practitioner and an expert.
I was say you've been there to see what happens when the food isn't right, and how to make sure the food gets there quickly, and then the technology that automates it all. So that's awesome.
Any desire to get back in the bread truck and do some deliveries?
Once in a while,
yeah. See, I came out of pizza, and it's like I still have dreams about working in a pizzeria. That's my life from 16 to 24. I was in a pizzeria. So
what is it?
I'm still slinging pizzas in my dreams.
What is it about those jobs where I'm the same way with the working in the bookstore, retail bookstore.
Yeah,
thing.
right.
I still romanticize that time of my life, even though I could barely pay rent. There's something romantic about that early job and that first gig you do.
That's right.
That the automated of the personal automation of you just getting up and doing the job and taking care of things. So.
Well, candidly, in our audience, anyone that knows me very well knows that when you get within 5 feet of me, they know I started as a bread man.
Fair enough.
There you go.
Good
All
stuff.
right. Well, then let's get into this topic about food safety. And I mentioned at the top of the show that foodborne illnesses. It's kind of seems it's a very common occurrence over the last, I know there's been a common occurrence in history as long as we've been producing food and trying to get it to people to eat in a safe and quick manner.
For sure.
But I feel like in particular, you hear a lot more stories about outbreaks and about, situations with, I know Chipotle is one of the obvious ones that you can single out as, a very classic example of a restaurant that just struggled through a lot of foodborne illness. I was actually surprised when I looked at it, and Jim did a presentation at one of our exec summits last year about this particular topic, and I was looking at the chart that you put on there of all the stuff that happened at Chipotle over the course of 7 months. E. coli outbreaks, salmonella outbreaks, just different locations all over the place that were quite alarming. The company's still doing fairly well, all things considered. They got on top of that fairly quickly, but it was pretty alarming. So when we hear more about all these cases, is this just something where is it a byproduct of the fact there's just more more visibility and more insight and more reporting on these, or is there something else going on why we're seeing so many of these foodborne illness outbreaks more than we've heard about? Typically, we'd hear about in the past.
Well, I think it's mostly the former.
Okay.
But that said, as long as I've been talking about this, which has been quite a few years, every time I look at the recall database up until I looked at it again last night just to have a clean new number.
Right.
It has been on the increase. The last time we worked together doing this, I remember that number being active recalls of about 600. Last night it was 909.
Wow. So what do you think is causing that kind of a spike?
I think the number one, the visibility, the technology, the acknowledgement that you've got to, if you're a producer or a mover of those goods, now you really need to report on it. And some of the there are procrastinators out there, and then there are the proactive planners out there in the end customer. And the more proactive or the more planning and adoption of traceability, the more that's going to show up.
Yeah.
So
in reality, this is not necessarily a terrible. I mean, it's not good that these are happening, but the fact that we're getting more of these cases means more of them are being caught. hopefully potentially before end users end up getting sick because of it, right?
It's being seen.
Yeah. That's not a bad thing, I guess.
Now,
the visibility.
that's kind of my layman's rationale as to why.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's not nothing's changed about how the goods are coming to market.
Right.
It's just more visibility in the data.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Just getting on top of this sooner.
We got a better magnifying glass at this point in time.
Yeah.
Right? But, I was trying to see if there were any statistics around it. But this is still a big issue, right? There's about, I don't know, it's estimated that 48 million people get sick every year. 128,000 are hospitalized and around 3,000. I don't know if this is correct. This is off the web die. I saw other statistics where it's actually higher than that. Maybe around close to 30,000 people can die. Maybe that's a global number. But so it's an issue.
There's stakes here, obviously.
It's an issue.
There's a reason for, by the way, I like the idea. I think it's a bit rich that they called it the final rule, as if there's not going to be any more rules.
Right.
But it's quite reasonable, particularly with our technology and our friends in the audience technology. We can solve this. It's it's not easy.
Right.
But the reasons why it's not easy is right in front of you. The capabilities is at everyone's disposal.
I think it's a little societal. We talk about this in the executive summits too, where you've got a younger generation that simply wants to know. They're used to having information at their fingertips, and so if there's an outbreak or if the lettuce is now being recalled, well, why and where did it come from? These are basic questions that society is asking that technology now needs to step in and provide some answers.
Yeah. I don't know if this is the right place to insert this, but as I was thinking about today, the last time you and I were together, if you remember, there was cantaloupe out on the buffet table.
Yep, that's right.
And we were in the midst of a cantaloupe recall.
No.
And our panel, when we had the discussion, we called out that there's a problem with cantaloupe. No one touched
the cantaloupe. There's a beautiful pile of cantaloupe for the rest of the day.
The hotel staff probably just picked it up and just well, never mind with that. Yeah. Oh, that's good. We were talking up front, too, about the last mile delivery aspect, and obviously, getting stuff to the stores. But also now we've got so many more people that are doing a lot of this direct to consumer stuff. I'm a big proponent of the box kit meals, the HelloFresh, and those kits of the like or whatever that deliver goods right to my door for me to cook. And I'm always a bit fascinated and amused by these because they give you pre-portioned, amounts of food, for you to cook with. So it's not like you're getting a packaged thing of cucumbers, for instance, that's pre-packaged, or even your meats, for example, whatever. You're getting just what you need to cook. And it's in a, sometimes it's just as simple as hey, here's a cucumber in a plastic bag.
Right.
It's, it's sealed off, and then, they're putting it in a box with, an ice pack basically to keep it cold. And I'm always thinking but that was in somebody's car for I don't know how long before it got. And granted, I have had no issues whatsoever, so clearly they know what they're doing. But, how is that changing things too? That we've got so many of these options now, not just about how do we make sure that food is safe to get to a grocery store or to a restaurant, but now also just to someone's doorstep. And especially, again, if, maybe they're not picking up that box for a few hours after it's been sitting out there, and who knows where it's going before it gets into their fridge. How are we making sure there that all that's, safe? How's that impacting this whole food safety discussion?
Well, the two things to talk about there. Number one, even in the ruling, the traceability requirement stops the moment we consumers can buy it.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So that means that the back door of the grocery store,
right,
or if there is a delivery system associated with that, or whether it's crowdsourcing or whether it's a hired person with a company issued truck with controls in the truck, that end recipient could be our front porch.
Gotcha.
The requirement is clear to state that traceability has to occur all the way to the point where we take title of it, whether it's a head of lettuce or soft cheese or whatever.
Yeah.
Even though somebody else might actually be taking title of it in the sense of a delivery, right? Yeah. Whether it's a drone or whether it's a person
Exactly.
or whatever. Yeah, okay.
Which I guess makes sense because you can't hold a manufacturer responsible for whether I'm stupid enough to leave my ground beef sitting out on the table for 3 hours or something, and then get sick after I eat that.
Well, yeah, for sure.
But
it also it's worthy of calling out that this ruling is not about how it is, which kind of bugs me a little bit. That means there's going to be another ruling come down. It's not about how it is. It's about where it is, who had it, and who has it now, and who has it next. So that if and when there is a problem that surfaces, they can go back all the way back through and find the source.
Right.
So that traceability, even if it's a crowdsourced, it goes on some part-timers in some part-timers' personal vehicle.
Right.
It still knows.
So you're saying the reason would you like to see the how would be like, well, this sat in the car too long. It was in a hot car for
temperature.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, everything
okay.
about temperature.
So we're not tracking any of that at this point.
That's not part of this ruling.
Not part of
at
this
all.
ruling. I see.
Which again,
I see. So
that was my point with the
the
delivery things, because it's one thing like if a refrigerator truck from Kroger or something is rolling up and giving you your groceries, you at least know like, all right, there was temperature control going on.
yes and no, but we're
Potentially.
not tracking that.
That's a good
right?
point. But then when it's somebody's just janky beat up Altima or whatever that rolls into my driveway, and the guy's popping it out of his trunk and tossing it on my front porch, I have no idea how long he's been driving around with that thing back there.
Yeah.
So. Well then, so let's get into the rule then, because I feel like that's kind of the heart of this conversation is understanding what this rule does, what it's going to require of the manufacturers and the supply chain process here. So this is FSMA 204 final rule, and to your point, the final part I think is fascinating. I almost feel like it should be kind of like a heavy metal guitar lick every say like final rule, like. So how is that? Explain to us like what it is, what the expectations are for where we're supposed to get, and we're talking like 2 years, less than 2 years at this point when this is supposed to be compliance and the implementation here. So get into the nitty gritty and the details behind this.
Okay, first time frame for whether they're procrastinators or whether they're proactive, they have 7 quarters until the deadline. Right.
That is not a lot of time.
That's
in
not
that world.
is not a lot of time. Then the other part to it is as complicated with acronyms as it seems. I'm very operational. Back to that breadman process.
Right.
But lot tracking has been around for a bit. The TLC acronym, lot tracking.
Okay.
In other words, identify it. And in one of the FDA in that ruling did a great job, I thought, with videos that just explains it to the layman out there of what things mean. And if you think about lot tracking, the moment that wild caught tuna, which is one of the videos, that wild caught tuna is brought to the fish house, well, that suddenly gets an identity. That's lot tracking.
Right,
That's all it is lot tracking. Assign a code to that tuna. And it can stay that way as long as that item remains one. And the reason why I bring up tuna is because quite often it doesn't remain one.
Right.
Next process, it'll get cut up.
I see.
And now where there was one lot track or one code to track, identity to track.
Right.
Now there's several because they cut it into tuna steaks. Simple as that.
Right. Yeah.
So the thing to remember is what is it that we're tracking? We're simply doing lot tracking the same way that manufacturing has done lot tracking for a couple decades, actually. Okay. So that simplifies that part. What is it? Okay. And then the second part to it and the fun part to our audience, KDE, that acronym, what in the world does that mean? Hilton's operational thought process, it's a scan.
Okay.
And that means they need a scanner
Right.
at every one of those points so that they can document that lot track went from this truck to that truck or this chain of custody to that chain of custody.
Right.
And by virtue of scanning, well, what am I going to scan? I'm going to scan a barcode. And that barcode has to be populated with, has to be the right kind of barcode so that it can be populated with the right kind of information. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, if you grasp those three things, this is really, I'm not going to say it's easy because you have so many chains of custody to get through, but the end user's part, or better yet, the seller's opportunity, says go track that segment of the market all the way back to the field or to the fish house or to the pasture,
right?
And follow it out and make sure that everybody's got a label and everyone's got scanners to scan that label.
Yeah.
And the system surrounding it.
Yeah. So KDE stands for key data element, correct? Mm-hmm. And so that's the piece that kind of crystallized in my mind. So so you want to track every single instance of a KDE along the process.
That's right.
Yeah, comes from the field, goes into a bag, whatever.
Goes into a freezer. Goes
Might be a little more complicated than that.
Well, I mean, but you're getting you're tracking every part of the process in essence.
And the heart of the reason why I wanted to come to the studio today is there's three of us here. All right. So let's imagine us, a supply chain.
Right.
We're moving. I've got this good. Maybe I picked it out of the field and we created it. It got its lot track code.
Yep.
And now I've got it. I've identified it and I've scanned it. Now it's effectively a unit to be traced. And you're a 3PL. You're picking those 100 or 500 crates up. Now you've got them. You're going to drive them 1,000 miles. You scan it onto your truck, into your facilities, and now you've got it down into the local community where the local delivery is going to happen. Another scan.
That's right. Yeah. Now, if it gets divvied up between that point, we're creating more KDEs.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
More chains of custody, more KDEs.
Yep.
I'll keep them to myself. But back when when this kind of got started, one of the finer thought leaders, and they do have a case study, so I'll talk about it. Disney properties.
Okay.
My first instance into this was I was taken into the Disney properties when I was thinking the Motorola era of my history.
Yeah.
And what they wanted to do was two things. Number one, they wanted to trace this product from the moment it hit their properties. Think about their supply chain, even on their property of a park. They wanted to trace this. And they did that. So they accomplished all that. And then they said, all right, we want to demand that our suppliers do exactly the same thing so that we can follow this. And this has been Motorola era, 2012, 13. And it was relatively easy to do for the single provider. And they had a one vendor that grew it and then delivered it. So one chain of custody.
Yeah. Pretty easy stuff.
Yeah,
right.
So and you can make that demand.
And so they pulled it off with that. But the moment it started getting into multiple chains of custody, it got tough. But again, that was 20 years ago. That's the premise around this rule is to stitch every bit of that together, because that identified TLC follows the product, or it is the product effectively in digital form. It follows the product throughout all those chains of custody when everyone's in compliance. Now, until they're in compliance, what's going to happen is someone that's in compliance is going to catch that crate of goods or that pallet or whatever it is that they're moving that they're required, and they're going to find that they have to initiate the TLC simply because that local farmer or whoever did this or whoever provided it didn't do that before. And I think that the listeners out there, this is both a hindrance or an objection as you go into a sales cycle, but it's also an opportunity.
Yeah.
Go all the way back through the supply chain, get that relationship with each vendor or with each end user to the point that you can get to the original.
So you're saying the way the rule is written, going back to the rule, it's the individual entity within the chain of command is responsible for their actions.
Where'd they get it?
And they got 7 months to figure that out. Figure out
7 quarters.
I'm sorry, 7 quarters.
Yeah.
To figure that out and tap into other systems, or just have a system that they can bring to bear if something needs to be traced.
There's a registry that you've got 24 hours to hand up that data.
Oh, I see. So there is
There's a data lake.
It was what? Sortable spreadsheets, 24 hours. They have to produce the data to the FDA, and they have to maintain those records for up to 2 years.
I see.
To track all this stuff.
So all they have to do is document it and hand it off.
I see. So if I'm a let's like honey, because I can totally imagine like a local provider. You know, if I'm a beekeeper and I've got honey, but I'm not tapped into this system yet, but I'm the person that picks up the product, right? So now I've got to track that, even though the honey provider has not. So, I mean, do you see this intricate web, you know, that comes in? Because you're advocating, well, I mean, for our resellers, they can go into these opportunities and follow the chain and just go to every single, notch along the chain and say, hey, you need to be compliant, you need to be compliant, you need to be compliant, right?
That was a question I had.
And here's how.
And here's how.
Right.
That's
And,
right.
Oh, by the way, where's that purchase order?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's the way I think.
Well, that was what I was wondering here, because where do you feel like the most of the onus is going to be? Is it going to be on the actual producers, the farmers, whatever, the facilities that are doing the initial housing, and maybe like you mentioned with the trout or the salmon cutting it up or whatever? Is it going to be on the big distributors, like say like the Cisco's and US Foods, the local folks? Like where do you think a lot of, or is it just everybody? But do you feel like is there one particular part of the supply chain that's going to have a little bit more of this onus on them than others, that maybe is a good starting point for these conversations?
I think it's going to be, let me say it in its most simplistic form, it's the food movers, the wholesalers, because they're the ones that have the agreement. I'm sticking with my fish story. They're the ones that have the agreement with the fish houses of the world. And they are the ones that can lay on those requirements that says, I'm going to buy this contingent on that lot code being established.
Right.
And to me, that's the beginning of this, is that lot code.
Makes sense.
After that, label, scanner, go. Obviously, a system above it.
Yeah.
That does
that makes sense. All right.
And
It reminds me a little bit of like how Walmart, has pushed the RFID
That's right.
thing.
I was just
by
about to
basically
go there,
being
yeah.
the ones that be like, hey,
Pretty much,
we're putting our foot down. This is what we want. If you want to work with us, you got to do it, and then everybody else had to figure that out.
Well,
from
not
there.
what we want, but what we have to do.
Well, yeah.
To remain compliant to the law, they have to have this information. So that might preclude them. Maybe they were distributing a product before, but if that product doesn't get compliant, then now they're at risk as a food distributor, right? They would probably not want to do business with them, potentially, because of that.
But I think that and this is going to happen probably 1,000 times a day for several months, but the paralysis will happen when something shows up on someone's receiving dock and it doesn't have that TLC.
Right.
So
now what do we do?
The contingency is there. And I want to make sure, because I skipped past it earlier, the other requirement, if you read, is that they every one of these movers of goods have got to have a plan. So when they are audited, which they've been under the scope, or the FDA has for since 2002. FSMA 2002 was the original rule.
Okay.
That warned everybody that this is coming. Right. And now it's 2024. It's here. But in that FSMA Rule 2002, it was clearly stated, we can come audit you to see how you're doing with whatever compliance rulings that we have in place. So one of the things that has been, one of the requirements that's been maintained all along is you have to have a plan. What's your plan?
Right.
And in my view, to our audience is that's a consulting opportunity. I'm going to walk in and I'm going to develop a plan, and the plan says not only what am I doing when everything's working right, but what happens when goods show up on my receiving dock that I'm the first time, even though there's maybe 3 other chains of custody that have occurred, I'm the first time to see this and digitize it. What do I do? That plan is a consulting opportunity to me. I think.
Definitely. This kind of reminds me a little bit of the cannabis industry and how they, have taken that kind of like piece by piece approach. The same way you were talking about the tuna steaks. Like, hey, when you chop it up, now each of those got to have a different tag, and each of those have to be a different item that wherever it's being dispersed is being tracked. That's how cannabis has been doing it too. Like, you can take the plant, but the second you cut something off the plant and then use that and send that on to somebody to make something or do whatever out of, each individual piece has to be tracked along the way too. And I just feel like it's kind of what we're talking about here in a way too. Maybe not, I suppose we're not going to get down to like, hey, you got to track every peanut individually, maybe as nitty gritty as cannabis gets about that, but still in the sense of we want to have much more insight and much more oversight, piece by piece as we go along here.
Well, to answer the question you didn't ask in there is it's down to the sellable unit.
Okay.
So what state is it in today? And if that gets, if that crate gets broken down into 10 cases, now there's 10. That's the next time. That's the same thing with that caught tuna. The minute that turns into 5 tuna steaks, then that's 5 pieces, not 1.
Exactly.
So
which makes sense.
That's the point. The other point I want to make in this process is that the data, that 24 hours of data, there are quite a number of there's partnering opportunity rather than figuring that part of this out. There are entities out there. Food Logic IQ is one. If you met Levi back at our
Summit,
PLM Fleet, which is a barcoding partner already, I've confirmed that actually in the last 24 hours.
Okay.
Very good friends of yours. That's the another entity that can take that data and hand it on up to the registry. So that becomes the easy part.
Kind of automating that to a certain degree. Yeah.
There you go. Well, then let's get into the technology piece of this, because I think that's what everyone's probably thinking is like, all right, well, how is this going to help me sell some, barcode scanners and all that stuff? Right. So what kind of like tech solutions are we looking at here to help enable this compliance and get these different entities wherever they are to where they need to be in order to fit into these rules? Because I know we talked about stuff like spreadsheets and reporting tools or whatever, but if again, to my mind, if you're going to do some legit track and trace, there's a lot of technology has to go behind that if you want to actually implement that. So help us with the tech side.
Well, I think we've already touched on the hardware side,
right,
and the labeling side. So the hardware component is there. The other, instead of starting at the beginning, let's start at the end of the supply chain, because that's the other thing that's changed with this. In broadline food distribution for years, it's interesting that in this world of my original direct store delivery market is really a replacement market today. I know friends that are in their 7th or 8th generation.
Oh, wow.
In the broadline food distribution, the thought has been for a long time that if I can scan it onto the truck, then I know its destination, and I know I can trust that driver with a paper invoice can take it off the truck at the right place and charge it in.
Right.
If you read the ruling, that has now got to be traced as well.
Documented.
So opportunity
I see.
is mobile device, mobile printer, last mile delivery software, which there are a few dozen that have the capability today, or a few, and there are a few dozen out there. So some of those developers need to get on it.
Right.
Another one of the BlueStar partners is Decision Point with the mobile conductor solution that not only is proven out, but it's got a really nice case study tailing right along with it that proves it out, that they've got the capability to take care of this. So hardware, last mile delivery software, and the integration back at the cloud to where it can be handed off to
Yeah.
the FDA registry. Moving back, it gets a bit easier because most warehouse operations, so when I say moving back, that scan onto the truck is generally a local process to where a driver is driving through their 30 or 40 accounts and they're dropping these cases everywhere. So the warehouse has been automated for quite a while. Right. So it just needs to be either refreshed if it's old technology or maybe technology refresh in both hardware and software there. And then now I'm back, if you think through my process, I'm back to the receiving dock to where I'm receiving and putting away those goods. Then that receiving software has got to be bolstered up or maybe looked at to make sure that the right architecture is there and the software is there to hold the additional amount of information that's going to be embedded in that label. And I've skipped past that label a couple of times. That label has to change. GS 128. Most barcoding labels that are out there, or barcode labels that are out there today, are not that sophisticated. So to have that TLC, to have the data that is needed at that stage in the receiving or the shipping process has got to be picked up. And the software, that's why I said that Mobile Conductor was already equipped to do that, because I saw it, that data has got to be available throughout that process.
Right.
And then probably the fun thing to say is at the end of that receiving dock is someone else's last mile.
That's true. This is true. Yeah.
So if I'm a seller going through that market, one of the newer questions I'm going to ask is, who are all your suppliers?
That's right. Yep.
And the second question I'll ask is, can you make some introductions? Just to make sure that they have the plan. And when we find holes in that plan, let's make sure we can solve for that.
And just keep going back.
All the way back to the field.
Yeah. Man, now, opportunities abound here. You know?
Does it still apply for stuff that's coming in internationally? Like if you've got components, that's not the right word, ingredients or whatever in the food world that, So you have to trace it all the way back to Belgium, or like if it's coming from there, or
it's got to land with that TLC code.
Wow.
I see. On U.S. soil, it's got to land with that code. Gotcha.
Man.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of ripple effects and not a lot of time to make this happen.
No doubt. Yeah.
I want to come back. We passed by one of your questions of who's doing this earlier, and you said something about Cisco and the likes. All the tier ones. I don't want to say all because I could be wrong, but let's say by and large the tier one broadline food providers have got this covered.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Or if not, they have their plan and they're working their plan, because you can't move 5, 10, 15,000 routes like that quickly.
Right. Yeah.
I would imagine they were probably heavily involved in these discussions with the FDA before
saw
this
it coming
was rolled
and
out
all
too.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's the tier twos and down. And fun fact with this, and when you invited me to do this, you didn't even know this. Next Tuesday, if you remember the panel discussion that we had at the Supply Chain Forum, where you brought us in for that, we're doing it again.
I see.
Next Tuesday to one of the major buying groups for the broadline group called Unipro, where we'll be on stage doing exactly the same conversation, except in that case, we'll be in front of maybe 100 end users.
Who need to get compliant.
Need to get compliant.
They need to understand.
Hopefully don't stand there with their eyes wide open, start getting a little nervous and sweaty. But if so, that's then they need to know they need to get on this.
There are a lot of questions.
Oh, I'm sure.
And that's why we were invited to do this. And when I talked to Unipro about it, they were wondering what we could do with food safety. And I said, well, funny you should ask. We did a panel And let me make a phone call, and yeah, the gang is coming back together
There you
to
go.
do exactly the same thing.
Well, I can imagine every member in that buying group, though, would be very interested. Well, they have
I
to.
would think so.
They have to know what to do here.
Yeah,
right?
it's not something you can just brush off and be like, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll get to that later.
No, but I wonder if that's going to happen. I mean, you're going to have rogue folks out there. That are
I'm
like,
sure.
Oh,
yeah,
we already get it. Again, I'm fairly involved with Unipro, and they're one of maybe 7 buying groups in this country. They happen to be the largest, but we've gotten quick comments. Well, there's going to be lawsuits that day. As a matter of fact, I'll say it on camera here. Even in some of the fine print of the ruling, they're stating that the deadline is December 31st, 2025, but they're also committing that there won't be any lawsuits for a period after that.
Just acknowledging what's the inevitable. Yeah.
So, we get the naysayers or the procrastinators out there will say, well, we really don't have 7 quarters. We've got more than that.
Right. They'll push it back. We'll wait and see what judges say.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. And my logic is that, and I'm going to be saying this to that room, as you can imagine, you've seen me talk. Let's don't be the one that has the recall.
That's right.
The requirements are clear. The FTL, which we haven't touched on, the food list is clear as to what needs to be covered.
Right.
And that part is the final part. They've looked at all the different categories of the foods, and they know the ones that can cause problems, and these are the ones that are included. Right. So if we have all those facts and the technology is readily available,
which it is.
Let's get on with it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I think putting your head in the sand is probably not a good tactic when it relates to this because, just everything we talked about even in the beginning, it's societal norm now. People want to know.
Yep.
And so if you're going to live in this business environment, you might as well tackle it right now. Yeah. Because there's no technical hurdle.
Proactivity is your friend in
There's
this.
a cost hurdle, and that's obviously going to be the pushback. But, I would even say that that's fairly nominal in the sense of the big picture of what it could cost, which we didn't even tap into, what it costs to have a recall or to go through that process and lawsuit. Oh, my Lord.
This feels like an inevitability. Like this is going to happen at some point. Maybe it doesn't happen exactly in January 26th, but it will happen. And why would you drag your feet any longer than you have to get on board?
Correct.
Might as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jim will help us wrap up here in a moment with a little bit more of his advice for VARs on how to actually go out there and win some of this business and get in on these opportunities. But first, as always, we want to thank our sponsors here on the TEConnect podcast. We appreciate all the fine folks that sponsor the show, that sponsor our TEConnect program. We could not do this without you.
That's true.
As always, though, hey, if you like the show, we want to hear from you. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, leave a comment for us. Tell us hey, I was really excited about what Jim said at moment 25, minute 20. Nobody does that. But if you've got something, I would. Yes.
You would, yes.
If you've got something like that, please do that for us. Subscribe to our channel. Leave us ratings and reviews on your podcaster of choice so that we know, that you like the show, what you're getting out of it. And of course, tell us what you want to hear about on the show.
There you go.
Because we're only as good as what, the
questions you ask.
We don't have brilliant people like Jim every day who are coming to us and say, hey, I want to be on the show. I'm going to drive up and come to the studio and we're going to talk about this. I'm like, okay. That doesn't happen very often. I need to know what you want to hear about. It could.
Yeah, that's right.
But if you tell us what you're interested in hearing about on the show, if you've got a guest that you think would be great for us and want to recommend them, please send that stuff our way. We always love getting that information. And hey, the new TEConnect podcast t-shirt is closer than ever.
That's right, it is.
Dean, Marco, and I have been bantering around about some designs for the new t-shirt.
Yes.
We're very close to getting something ready to go and start some printing and get some shirts out. I owe a bunch of people some shirts already.
Oh, boy.
But I want to
a backlog?
Yes, we've already got a backlog. Right. Not to mention us. Just
that's right.
Too.
That's right.
So, Jim, you want a t-shirt? You want a TEConnect podcast t-shirt?
I do.
Of course he does.
Fine, there we go.
There you go.
There's one more for the list. So we got a list that needs to get some out to, and I want to also award them to new folks who reach out and tell us what they want to hear about on the podcast. So drop those ideas to us. You can always find a link in the show notes to send in your topic submissions, or you can reach out to us directly anytime. You can always follow BlueStar's LinkedIn feed. We're always posting about the pod there. Leave comments and there, and we'll pick up on those. Or you can email us directly, TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, let's wrap up today with our value to the VAR.
Yep.
And Jim, I feel like you've been tugging at a lot of these strings already.
We got some opportunity.
A lot of recommendations and a lot of if I were VARs. But now let's really get in on it. So if you thinking your VAR hat here, what kind of conversations should they be having right now as they're working with food manufacturers, suppliers, these different parts in the chain that they know this is coming, it's happening. You can't stay away from this. Again, get in early and get involved. What kind of conversations should they be having? What should they be talking to them about? What would you do if you had some of these customers and you're thinking like, all right, this FSMA rule is coming. I want to go and start having some conversations about how I can potentially help them out with getting compliant.
Can I start before that?
Yeah.
Yep.
If I were the VAR, the first thing I would do, and I'm not suggesting it requires a hire, I would assign a champion. There's so much material out there that are at the fingertips that I would assign a champion that says, okay, you are going to become our food traceability expert, our FSMA 204 expert. And you're going to guide us as to what to do, what to say, personas, and everything that a champion assigned in there. And again, I'm not suggesting it's a new hire warrants because it's not, there's not that much demand on it, but that shows an importance both to the prospective customer as well as coming back into the organization that puts a checklist of, okay, we've got 32 things to do and we're on item 12 now. Let's keep going to 13, 14, 15 before the daily pressures get this set aside.
Right.
To help with that, I think if you look at the opportunity and if you look at our market like a Rubik's Cube, I know that there are VARs out there. I know quite a few of the VARs, and they focus on different things. There's a group that focuses on field to first crating, let's say. There's people that are in the last mile, like our friends at Mobile Conductor.
Right. Yeah.
So I would figure out the segment when that Rubik's Cube is faced that way of the solution. Where is my sweet spot? What's my core offering to this in that food space? And really get my story up on that.
Right.
Then I would go to the customer. That determines the go-to-market, and that go-to-market is literally a list of customers, whether it's produce, whether it's meat plants, whoever it is, they become you now can find the buyer. You got a hero that knows what to say, what the requirements are. The sales reps can go pitch it, and this hero can dive in or dive out or whatever, and you know who you're going to go talk to. And I would suggest that the problem is so big that there's literally, obviously, competition is going to happen.
Sure.
Right.
But the market, there's a sizable market here over the next 7 to 12 quarters that
and beyond
that let's go get some business with this. So that's the way I would do it. Now, what I would be saying to that customer is, whether it's a free of charge or a first service, that's for service fee. Let's take a look at your plan. And is your plan something that you did 5 years ago in anticipation of this and it's spot on? Or did you do it 10 years ago and it's not so good?
Yeah. Right. Needs a little refinement maybe at this point, yeah.
And that literally will determine what they need to do with their technology, which I'm suggesting starts literally at the most basic. What's the label? and then builds up from there.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, there's opportunity there. There's recurring revenue that we really didn't get into with the software portion of it. You touched on it a little bit, but this is starting a process where you're going to have to nurture it over time as well. But when you think about it, it's not just the traditional maybe AIDC reseller that this is an opportunity for. It could be a point of sale, because to your point, Jim, I mean, there's like where the opportunities is going to be in the lower tiers, right? It's not the major food district. Yeah, they've got it all figured out, but like the local, food truck that is sourcing things at literally, right out of the field and things of that nature. These are opportunities. So even if you're a POS reseller, or maybe if you're not traditionally out on the edge, if you're an MSP, right? You're dealing in server rooms and clouds and things of that nature. You're providing IT services to some of these areas. There's an opportunity to explore this new finding and the opportunity that comes with it. So, yeah, I love the idea of assigning a champion. Getting somebody within the organization who's going to have a basic understanding of this and can champion the sale. Yeah.
And you guys could host the bringing up the intellectual property growth of those champions as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Just a thought popped in my head.
There you go. Yeah.
Definitely. Good stuff. Yeah. And I think also just, getting out there and just asking questions about like, hey, this is coming. What's going to be the biggest challenge for you? Like knowing that, that here's all these things you're going to have to do over the next, less than 2 years. What's going to be the hardest part of that? And whatever the answer to that is, like, hey, that's probably something I can help you out with. I mean, it's, again, I think there's a lot of these folks that know it's going to happen, and either, like to your point, they're dragging their feet and thinking like, we might ride this out and see what happens, or they're running around with their heads on fire trying to figure out what to do. And you could be that calm presence that it comes in. Again, if, like you said, if you have that champion that already knows all the ins and outs and walks in and says, hey, have you thought about this? What about that? How are you going to address this part of the thing? And that can lend you that kind of credibility that someone stops and is like, we need to have them come in here and take care of all this for us, because they seem like they know what they're talking about. I'm going to turn the keys over to them and let them help us get where we need to go.
Well, and on that point, I think we can help with the ecosystem. Obviously, we know great people like Jim Hilton that can if you need additional assistance, we can get you up and running in that regard, right?
Exactly. So and all the great partners to get you there.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, yes. If you want some more insight into this, if you need some help, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us at BlueStar, and we'll be happy to connect you with the right folks to get these solutions off the ground for you. But let's wrap up, as always, with our favorite segment, What's TEConnecting with You?
Yes.
This is where we get to talk about something in the world of business, science, tech, innovation, just something that's, got our attention that we're, playing with, looking at, reading about, fascinated by.
Yep.
Jim, I'll let you kick it off here. What's TEConnecting with you right now?
First of all, I want to finish out this conversation with how it is.
Oh, how? Yes.
Temperature control.
Okay. Yeah,
I think
that's a good one.
I think that's the next thing to solidify. It doesn't need to be an amusing thing that we could do. I was walked the floor of Modex last week, and I was taken with how much more common sense are built into the temperature control offerings that are out there today, and that really sews up the problem, the solution.
Yeah, right.
That's back in that payload.
Gotcha.
Not only do I know who had it, who's getting it, but how is it while I own it?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And the other thing is around connectivity on that truck. So get away from what it is, but the technology that is required now on that truck. I'm just really enamored with
absolutely
the connectivity, keeping that vehicle connected. And I'm going to go back to 3 weeks ago, AT&T outage.
Yes, right, yeah.
What if you're a food, and on the truck, there's a telematics, there's a proof of delivery system, there's a GPS system going on. There might be a front camera, there might be a rear camera, and probably missed 2 or 3 other components of reasoning why that truck must be connected to the cloud. Maybe not constantly, but every few minutes.
Yeah, regular interval. Yeah,
anyway.
for sure. Yeah,
and to have the carrier just go away.
Yeah. Whoops.
Which is what it did.
Yeah.
Wow.
In certain parts of the market.
Yeah.
And so I'm really enamored with and looking and working with a group called Advantix that is a cross-carrier connectivity that is kind of changing that rule around literally looking for strongest signal and hopping from one to the other to the other to the other.
Nice.
So with the entire intent of keeping that truck connected.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing you can't afford to have any disconnection for any amount of time. Yeah.
No, but the innovation that's happening on this front, to your point, is astounding, because not only is it, okay, so another option would be, well, if the truck doesn't get connected, we need to back up that data on the truck. So now you can get into 5G routers that actually have compute power that can store data for X amount of time, maybe all the way until it gets docked back up, kind of a thing. So there's just a lot of innovation happening on that front that we're looking into. That's even pressing, BlueStar to start looking at different parts of the technology chain, if I could, and connectivity is a key point.
And candidly, we're looking at same groups in a couple
there
cases.
you go. That's right. Yeah,
we're all friends.
We're all friends. That's right. That's right. That's right.
Good stuff. All right.
So is that what's TEConnecting with you then, or you got something else that you're,
That's those two things are just massive. I think
it's a whole different realm,
and it's straightforward, and it keeps me in my sweet spot of the truck.
Fair enough.
Always comes back to the truck for you, doesn't it?
Yes.
You're just ready to hop in there and start delivering some bread at any time.
I love it. I love it.
All right, Dean. What's
so
TEConnect
we discussed foodborne illnesses, but how about staph infections? Those kill, unfortunately.
That's not fun
10,000 in the U.S. Well, here's the headline though: scientists discover new class of drug effective against antibiotic-resistant staph infections. So we've all heard about how antibiotics. There's the fear, right, that they're going to become less and less effective because because the staph infections are actually getting smarter and smarter and smarter. Okay, so we're combating it by using AI. MIT. Well, you knew I'd come back to that.
I know.
MIT researchers identify a new class of antibiotic candidates. So they're using AI, known as deep learning, to get into discovering a class of compounds that can kill drug-resistant bacterium that causes these deaths. So in a study that was published in Nature, researchers showed that these compounds that AI is actually dreaming up, right? AI is the one that's coming up with this. But it shows that these can kill, and I'll try to say it, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, MRSAs. Can we go with the acronym?
I think you got most of that right.
Okay, great. Grown in a lab, and they're testing it on mouse, things of that nature. But indeed, the world is coming where we're utilizing AI to do predictive modeling and things of that nature. And here, in a good case, to thwart bacteria getting smarter than we are. So So take that, bacteria. We got MIT people on it, and they're coming up with compounds that can thwart that. But this would be a good thing, right? And so maybe another way to think about it, if it's a foodborne illness, well, maybe we can develop some medicines that can help out immediately too on that front. Nice. But anyway,
that's always a big concern in the medical world: is the too much antibiotics, and is it just going to get going to make the super bugs even more super?
So good use of AI.
There you go. All right. Well, I'll get into some more AI here.
Yes.
In particular, the EU, who just rolled out their AI Act, which is a sweeping legislation that starts in May to basically kind of keep AI under control and make sure
that the direction they're going.
Now, I find this funny that the EU is doing this. A giant conglomerate of multiple countries.
Is it EU or UK? I'm sorry.
The EU.
EU. Okay, got it.
When again, in one country here, we still haven't figured out how to handle social media.
That's right.
We're still trying to figure out how to stop spammers from emailing us and calling us.
Yeah.
And yet EU's over here like, we've already figured out an act that we're going to legislate how AI is going to work.
Yeah.
But now, of course, given some caveats, this is all going to be a little easier said than done. But it's a great step in the first step in the right direction. So here's some of the stuff that the act is going to manage.
Pray tell.
It's going to ban the use cases of AI that pose high risks to individual rights, especially in the areas of healthcare, education, and policing. They said, but there is some carve-outs for public safety to remain. Basically, think of it this way. Our dream of the Minority Report future where the thing is going to scan you and try to sell to you, that's not going to be allowed. That kind of facial recognition would not be allowed. But still potentially for the public safety and law enforcement side to prevent crime or whatever, which Granted, it also has its share of pros and cons and potential pitfalls.
Oh, so they can take facial recognition to determine if you're a crime, or in crime.
If you are a
crime, or if you are a criminal. Yes.
So they could potentially do that kind of stuff, but not something that's trying to sell to you or use your face to figure out where you are and target you with marketing or track you for any other advertising or marketing type purposes.
Keep going.
So that's one of the
aims.
There will be stronger labeling requirements for when interacting with AI. So meaning that if you're somewhere that's using like an AI chatbot or has AI built into whatever you're using, they're going to be required to tell you that, or required to tell you that you're looking at AI generated content, which again could be tricky because it's easier said than done.
That's for sure.
To know that. For sure. The responsible corporations will do this, but there might be still nefarious ones that make it a little harder.
Well, we might have to do that, right? Because we use Gen AI for image creation.
Exactly.
And now we're going to have to put a little disclaimer on the bottom, created by AI.
That's my point of this, whereas like a lot of this stuff will have ripple effects that will eventually affect us, much like GDPR.
For sure.
Affected how we market in many ways.
Absolutely.
This is going to affect a lot of stuff that's going to ripple to other countries as well. The Act also allows for citizen complaints, so someone can complain if they think that AI has harmed them in some way. Not sure I'd want to have that job.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you get some very interesting complaints, that come out of that.
Oh, man.
And it's also going to require a lot more transparency and oversight from AI companies that are actually creating and manufacturing these AI products themselves, too.
Okay.
A lot more, basically a lot more where they're going to have to divulge what they're doing and training and how they're building out their AI tools. So again, I know this is one of those things that like it's a lot, and it's going to be a lot of like, how are you going to pull that off?
Yes.
But it seems like a step in the right direction to at least put some stakes down and say, hey, here's the kind of stuff we expect to happen around AI in order to make sure this doesn't just run amok at some point in the future. So,
did they have just one sentence that said, "And nobody can create a company called Cyberdyne"? And I mean, that's just like that seems basic, right? You can't.
I would hope so.
No Terminators. You can't create a Terminator.
I would hope so, but it's possible that the robots are already sent something back in time to take that out, so it never got put in there. Like, oopsie daisy, you didn't put it there.
So. There's always a loophole, right? Let the conspiracy theories start.
Exactly.
Yes. All right, fair enough.
So maybe a little bit of AI regulation might be on the way, even if we can't figure it out ourselves.
Oh, we'll never figure it out.
Maybe EU will kind of push us in the right direction.
That's what'll happen. So, we'll just have to be compliant over there. And,
there you go.
Man, we're talking a lot today about compliances, aren't we? Yes.
Really? I hope that's something you're into, dear viewer, because if not, this might have been a boring episode for you. All right, that does it for us today. That's what's TEConnecting with us. It is time for us to unplug. Jim Hilton, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jim.
Today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely loved having you on the show. We'll drag you back up here sometime for another conversation.
There's be more to talk about.
We're willing to do it.
Yes.
So until next time, go out and find your champion. Find out who that person is. Give your lunch meat an extra sniff before you put it on a sandwich, maybe. And as always, folks, please stay connected. The TEConnect podcast is brought to you by ELO and their completely redesigned series, iSeries 3 with Intel.
Very nice.
Adding the dependability that businesses need. These brilliant and beautiful interactive displays feature a modular design and endless versatility with sizes of 15, 17, 22, and 24 inches, a slate version, and square or wide aspect options.
Holy moly.
If you can't pick something out of that, then
you had me at endless opportunity.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah, you're right.
Come on.
Yeah.
Every iSeries 3 offers 10 Touch Pro PCAP, a fanless IP54 rated design, edge-to-edge glass, and Intel's 12th generation processors for reliable enterprise-grade security.
Nice.
Now, you have available models that support Windows, Chrome OS Flex, and Linux. So the iSeries 3 is also compatible with ELO's Z stands and the Z Series ELO POS for self-service and point-of-sale applications.
Nice.
I mean, what can't you do with these things?
Exactly right. Yes.
Like just
any operating system, plug-and-play modularity on any stand. What more do you need?
I don't think you need any more.
There you go. Just go out and find the opportunity.
Just fill your warehouse up with these
and go find some opportunities.
Yeah,
that's
just,
it.
Make money. That's it. Start printing it up.
Make money.
Learn more about the redesigned iSeries 3 by checking out the link in the show notes or contacting the BlueStar ELO team.